Welcome to the February 19th, 2026 Master Plan Subcommittee meeting. I'd like to call this meeting to order and begin with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right. So we're continuing the process of evaluating and discussing the Survey Monkey results, and we were charged that from our last meeting to identify particular tasks. I know Salem said he had zoning and economic development and hasn't had the opportunity to develop that. I had transportation and community facilities. Philip had land use and natural resources. So Phil has submitted his documentation, and mine is not as thorough as yours.
Quite all right.
But, so if we want to review this, we'll start with Phil's. As far as in the first paragraph, the objectives express, where planning and zoning boards should work to implement the objectives outlined in the master plan. Zoning is a ZBA. It doesn't have that task.
Oh, I see.
Do you understand?
Yeah, I was mainly just pulling that
Is
from.
it part of a different document, a reference to it?
Okay.
So the planning board, where planning board should work to implement the objectives. And I would probably say along with the select board.
Yeah, in the previous document, they list all sorts of entities, but I thought we should be a little more specific who we're asking to actually implement the master plan. So I think you're right, select board.
Yeah, I would put the select board there, or start with the select board and then planning board. Oh, no, the planning board and then select board, because planning board's tasked with developing this and getting the input from the planning, select board, and then the planning board is the one who finalizes according to the RSAs.
This was sort of an introduction for just this whole section in general. Are
Yeah.
we thinking that, should we have a little, like you have an introduction for each category? Or do you think one?
Well, I think that will speak to, where's the little piece of paper? That would probably fit in with this other, I think you have a copy of this somewhere electronically. But that introduction, and then to put that in there. You know what I mean?
Okay, yeah, so we'll slate this for the other introduction.
Right, for the main introduction. I think that's what you're,
Yeah. There was just a little bonus, not necessarily tied to goals and objectives.
right.
John, do you have the? I didn't print out my docs like Bill did. So you have it? Sorry, just making sure.
Then, yeah, your overall from the previous, ahead of the previous meeting.
Exactly.
And the detailed ones.
All right, perfect. I can sort of walk you through just briefly what this land use and growth management, a lot of the survey questions led directly to these goals. Like the first one identified as put a cap on the number of living unit building permits allowed each year. And you two are way more versed in the ins and outs, the workings of the town than I am. I took a stab at what the way to go about that would be, but I'm sure you guys can correct me.
Yeah, I guess the only thing I called out was, and you said perhaps one that automatically increases by a certain percentage every 5 to 10 years, and I agree more so with your second, or undergoes review every 5 to 10 years. I don't know that an automatic increase makes sense, because maybe nobody's buying, or maybe, you know,
Yeah, I was thinking
Well-
like the way things get
So-
pegged to inflation or something like that, so we can, get rid of that.
and then I even thought we could consider, why not tie it, you know, rather than a review every 5 to 10 years, tie it to when the master plan is updated, like, review the cap as part of, you know,
I like
the
that.
whole thing.
I like that suggestion.
Yeah,
And then I think that's a
But-
little elbow to actually update the master plan too.
right.
That is,
But not to say that it couldn't be adjusted in between. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, if you don't, then it is a reason to actually update the plan.
No, yes, but I'm just, my point is, if we're gonna, the plan is every 10 years, technically, is the goal. But in between the implementation of this and then, it could be adjusted, right? Or are we saying it only can be adjusted when the plan is renewed?
well, that's probably, the specifics are probably for the planning board to really like
Right.
hammer
'Cause
out. These are
I
just-
think, in the time I've been here, I think there was a time where we had a moratorium on building permits.
No kidding.
And there is a limitation on subdivision, like a subdivision being built out,
Right,
still on the books.
right. Okay. I don't know what you did for an adjustment.
Oh, I just said, well, I'll resend it to you afterwards. I said, I just changed the end to perhaps one that is revisited with subsequent master plans.
Okay?
Um,
Yep. I know they're, based upon the response to question, goal 2, there's still debate as to whether Conservation Commission, I don't know if you're on that board. or not, you-
sub-member.
There's debate as to whether they're wanting to accept any further conservation property pertaining to clustered housing especially.
I think there's a distinction, though, between accepting land and accepting land that nobody has said they, like, no outside group would take under conservation as an easement. So that, you know, direct town ownership versus purchased by the town with somebody, a
Right.
steward, already in mind. I think this is kind of inferring that stewardship model.
Hmm.
Right.
Because otherwise you see, like, a subdivision may pick all their trash land, throw it in conservation's lap, and then they're stuck with the cost of marking it and managing it, and they didn't even
Right.
want it in the first place.
Yep.
In light of that information, may erase my objective, but the goal still remains.
No, I think it's I think it's fine.
Oh.
It's just, it's gonna be discussed based on what Salem just said and based upon the current temperature
Okay.
of the board. Not this board, not the planning board, but the
Yeah,
conservation.
yeah, I understand. So should any sort of,
No, I think it will be adjusted as time goes on, if it needs to be.
I do think it's accurate to say evaluate strategic areas, and
Yes.
I mean, it's, yeah.
And that's that education piece too, when we talked last time, when you look at the overwhelming presence of our community is rural ag, not residential. And there are at least 3 large parcels that are town forest that are in conservation already. So that becomes that teaching point for the community to understand that this is our makeup already. It's not like we have to reinvent the wheel to make, to protect our rural community, because it's already rural. We just need to manage growth,
yes.
which is important in the sense that the 2004 expected us to be over 12,000 people at this point in history, some 20 years later. And we're not. We're based upon last spring, I gave you that, our population was 9,200. So our growth has been managed well, as opposed to rampant growth.
Mm-hmm. Salem, this is a good, if we are moving on to point
Yes,
three.
yeah.
Thought of that you should be the one writing about the impact fees. I learned about these from you in the first place.
Well, I mean, I thought your summary was great.
Yeah.
It did come up a couple of times when I was on the planning board, and there were some vocal members who I still ardently disagree with, who think it can't be done. I certainly think it can be done, and the survey results say it should be done. So
I
I
hope,
suppose I'm biased.
well, I mean, the people have spoken. This is the direction we should go according to the survey, so. Learning about how other towns implement impact fees, it sounds like there's something called an impact fee schedule. We need to
Right.
determine what are the costs and how much should each development bear. So I guess making this schedule it starts with that.
Right. Okay.
Didn't have much to say about zoning. Don't,
Yeah, 4 is fine, because that was clear. I'm not sure what number 5.
yeah, we asked about clustering divisions. We had some, in the survey, we asked about, various strategies to help consolidate developments, keep the sprawl intact. For example, the clustering idea. But whether most survey takers didn't understand the concept or just simply didn't like it, there wasn't any desire to move forward with encouraging clustering. But I guess, so I didn't really know what else to mention there.
And I guess I took those responses as people like, and tied, I guess, even with number 4 that we kind of glossed over, like, people like the lot sizes, like
Yeah.
area
Mm.
around them, don't necessarily want houses jammed up next to each other, even if that does mean there's an aggregate amount of open land.
Yeah, I mean, we can't know for sure. My interpretation was, if they answered in the affirmative that let's encourage these subdivisions to be clustered, we are in some way advocating for subdivisions, and perhaps the question was answered in the negative because of that, but we don't know.
Right, encourage that new residential subdivisions be clustered. It was strongly opposed.
Exactly. So,
Which I think as worded says, for those developments that will occur, should they be clustered? But
that could have been
not everybody
better.
could read
Yeah.
it that way.
So,
Yeah, so, right. So it's not saying that it can't be clustered, it's not saying that it all should be clustered,
Yeah, it's,
or that all should not be clustered.
because of that survey result, I don't think we can have an objective be that we reform subdivisions in any way, really.
I think, yeah, it comes down to how best to use the piece of property that's being considered, and what impact is it making on its immediate neighborhood, if you would. Because there is a lot of clustered developments that are already in town that you don't even realize they're there. There's one little 5-6 house setup on Elm Street off of, I can't remember the road now. Heading towards Hopkinton off of Walker Hill. And all its property that's in unison, if you will, is this hill. It's really, unless you're gonna climb the mountain, it's really not conducive to public property, but you never know it was that way, because all the lots are small lots.
Yeah.
They don't, they
If
meet,
they hadn't been allowed to, I'm assuming the buildable number would have been fewer,
oh, yeah,
so
Right.
who did it actually benefit? The person subdividing and building houses.
correct.
So I mean,
And yet, though, when you live in that neighborhood, you don't have the sense that you're on top of each other, either. And, because I know people who live there, well, former people who live there, too. But that dynamic is still rural for them, because they're used to looking out the window and seeing their neighbor having dinner. You know, and that's the other part of the philosophy of understanding what we call rural. For some people, for rural, it's at least 3 driveways between the house, as opposed to an acre between the house. You know what I mean? So our rural flavor is still kind of dependent upon your interpretation, if you will.
I think, going back though to something that we kind of not skipped over but axed, I agree with what you said, Pastor Bill, about the planning, is that zoning is not part of the implementing, but they do have an important job in enforcing the rules. And what led me to this was, you had the thought of like compiling historic annual number of building permits. It would also be interesting to compile like, how is our, not the density that's allowed in the book, but what has actually been allowed? What has gotten through zoning with exemptions and whatnot? And how has that trended? Because if there is if we say, oh, everybody, minimum 5 acres, rural ag, whatever, but what's actually happening is exemption, and the reality becomes 3 acres, 2.5 acres. Well, then we're getting squeezed by a zoning board that's not, necessarily considering.
But based on what I've seen with the present zoning board and previous zoning boards, it's not a dead given every time you go.
I'd agree with the zoning board.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because you have to give the proof. It's not like you just, well, it's a hindrance to me, I'd like to do this, I want to have an exemption from the zoning. And you have to make your argument. If you don't make your argument, you don't get it passed.
I agree that's how it's supposed to work, and I agree that has improved, but I think that's a key part of the system, the way it's supposed to work, is if the town agrees these are our zoning, this is the zoning agreement that we all abide by, then the zoning board shouldn't be handing out exemptions like candy.
Correct.
Or at least we should look into just how often is a variance granted, or this is to your original point, right?
Yeah, and that's the job of the planning board to say, hey, we should ask the town by way of vote to modify, the zoning rules. And then the town can say, yes, we do as a town want to allow us, a smaller acreage minimum or whatnot. But if you don't ask the people and instead provide an exemption every time, well then you've just skirted what the people have said the rule should be. And so my whole point with all this was, I think that if that system is not properly in place, then it can lead to a perception of a loss of a rural community. When you can look at the stats and say, well, no, we still, of course we have that, but somehow it's slipped away. You just can't feel it. You can't understand why not anymore.
So as a potential, if we were to move forward with that as a potential objective under number 4, that zoning should look into or compile some sort of data on variances granted related to lot size, or more
It'd be
broad,
interesting-
more
it'd be
broadly.
interesting to see, like how can we categorize variances, exemptions, and whatnot, and for what reasons, and if then the planning board decides there are good reasons, they can propose a change to, the zoning, like propose zoning amendments.
Right. But proposing a zoning amendment doesn't change the process for the zoning board.
Not the process, but it changes, not the actual checklist that they follow, but it does change the outcome. If the zoning rules are different, then the people should receive a different outcome
From the planning board.
from the zoning board. If the planning board suggests changes, they suggest zoning amendments, which then if the people vote yes on, the zoning board enforces those differently. They enforce whatever the people have said.
Correct. And that's the only way that it all works anyways.
Yeah.
The planning board can't whimsically put together a zoning amendment without the people's permission. So what I'm saying is that we still, I guess, it comes down to appointments as to who's sitting on the zoning board of adjustment, so that there's more stringency. They need to be charged with that, to be more faithful to making sure that this is not just, well, you came to us, we're gonna give it to you. No, you really need to do your homework. And that works down the line to say, there have been times sitting on the planning board that it's been said, you could go for a variance, but you're probably not gonna get it. And it had nothing to do with the people on the zoning board, it had to do with the zoning. The zoning itself was prohibitive for any change. But then there's a whole process that goes down, all the way down to land use department, to have them have the proper information to say, this is the way you should be considering this in order to address the issues. Because zoning says no, you should really consider no, as opposed to, well, the zoning can be, you can challenge it, but you have to prove the challenge. So I guess to add a statement that, I'm not sure if it fits in 4, or even to rephrase 5 to say, well, actually, it goes back, let's go back to 1. It should be annual number of building permits issued and variances given. And that will cover a process to evaluate. Do you know what I mean? Does that make sense? As opposed to reinventing something later? It would just
that
give us
actually does make sense.
It broadens the perspective of understanding that it's not just building permits,
Yeah.
it's variances to the zoning.
The actual throughput,
Right.
which is, yeah.
So what issued forth the building permit? So we need to go back to look at was there a variance given for that building permit? And then evaluate are those, is the history normative to say that this type of exception is always given, or this type of exception is hardly given? So evaluating that process for the planning board or for the building department to assess as well, because that would kind of fall into their bailiwick to do that assessment and then make a recommendation to the planning board, because
All right, so I'll read how that comes out now. The planning board should compile a historic annual number of building permits and variances issued. The planning board should agree on an annual cap of building permits, one that is revisited with subsequent master plans.
sounds good.
All right, so now we're back at 5. We have no suggestions or, I mean, there's nothing after, regarding developments, no objective. Just, let it be.
Or you could say, and that would go under the building permits too, in the sense of that we want to manage, instead of saying that, to properly manage subdivision development.
Where would I mention properly?
5.
Yeah, the town should not encourage new developments to be clustered or otherwise.
Yeah, the town should
Town should.
consider new developments based upon protecting the rural nature of our community. And there's been at least, and I haven't been on the planning board for very long, 6 years. There's been at least 3 or 4 developments that have come to us and never went anywhere. Whether it was the builder decided they couldn't do it, or the builder decided that it wasn't part of their scheme, or they didn't get the funding, or whatever it might be.
Actually, I kind of like this point. That kind of gives the master plan a little bit of oomph, and it could be something that could be interpreted as, this subdivision right on the main street that looks like a city, that's against rural character, and that's grounds for the town of Ware to veto. Kind of. I mean, it only has teeth if planning board takes this statement and goes somewhere
Correct,
with it,
right.
but yeah, all right, so we can.
Or to give guidance to what those
Yes,
developments
yes.
look like.
Is it still fair to what your intentions were if it says the town should only encourage? Because without that, it sounds like
Yes,
more,
yes.
okay.
I think only would be good.
So just, the town.
Well,
should
we didn't
only-
use the word, the town should only consider new developments,
Okay, sorry.
or, I can nail down the phrasing afterwards.
Yeah, just the idea of, it's more of like, are you seeking that out, or are you, when somebody comes to you, you say.
We're managing it.
Right.
Yeah. I mean, it's like Duck Pond Estates, if you will. There are 2 commercial properties right out front. And there's one lady who's she's the house, not the straight-in house, who was with us when the final easement for the box culvert went through. She was worried about what the developer was gonna, and the developer doesn't own that property. It's still for sale. But it's a piece of commercial property. When you look at it, in order to make it feasible, you're gonna have to reconstruct the whole, it's a hill on both sides. It's nothing's gonna really be built there. I don't even know why it's being considered for sale. And there's another piece across the street, that's this wedge,
The sign's gonna
you know,
collapse any day now.
yeah,
It's been there so long.
right.
All right, last point. Yeah, this one had a lot to it. So I'll open the floor to you two with
So how do we come
any
up
comments.
with the Montpelier? Is that something you researched, or was it, I don't remember.
Oh, that's just a well-known fact that Montpelier is the only capital in America that lacks all the standard, how do you call it, undesirable development that every other major city has. So I was curious, how are they able to discourage certain development while encouraging the kind of stuff that we're talking about? Slightly different being a city, of course. So we might not we don't have to name them by name, but that's kind of what I was curious about. It would, if planning board did want to research it, that would be the model to emulate.
I had the same question. I thought I must have missed something at the last meeting.
Right. The only distinctive that I would say is that the model or the philosophy behind it would be legit. How they've implemented it wouldn't fit here.
Sure.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah,
In the sense of,
Yeah.
when you drive downtown Montpelier, you know it's like going downtown Littleton or downtown Bristol or downtown Pittsfield, or, I mean, it's more of a, not even suburban, it's more city feel, but it's still not city. It's not like going downtown Manchester or downtown Concord. You know what I mean?
Yeah, no, of course.
Because it, in order for, like, when I reviewed a couple thoughts from the 2004 about putting sidewalks downtown here. And in order for that to happen, the road has to be changed in order to manage that, because there are some houses that are, there's no way you're putting us on the corner up here in the yellow house. There's no way you're putting a sidewalk there unless you move the road further east in that area to make it work. Or that it's only a sidewalk on one side. So the town I grew up in, from our common area, and it's only on one side of the road and one part of the road, Boston Road, from the common down to the schools, there's a sidewalk on one side of the road. But when you look at the makeup of those homes, it's like, I can't remember the name of the town. When you go up Route 5 or Route 12 along the New Hampshire-Vermont border, there's a couple towns you come up and everything is set way back. And the road is nice. It's not super wide, but it's wide enough. And then there's a good piece of grass, and then there's a sidewalk, and then their front yard is like huge, because they designed purposely to have that type of setting, you know? Whereas here, there was no purpose to the setting, per se. So in order to facilitate such a experience, which really goes against our rural flavor, so to speak, to try to give us some sense of a town center, well, we have that, but do we need the sidewalks to make it legit? Is the sidewalk in front of the middle school the answer to the problem type of thing? And for some people, they walk that on a regular basis. They walk around the whole building on a daily routine, even while school's in, which I'm not sure if that's technically permitted, because you're encroaching on school property in order for that to take place, because they're not just walking the sidewalk that's out by the road on the other side of the fence, but they're walking the sidewalk that's in front of the school and around and so forth. Should they be strongly discouraged outside of commercial industrial areas? Which they would be prohibited anyways. You can't put these buildings up in the residential, you can't put these buildings up in, I'm talking about the further categories that you've described here.
Well, so I guess the logic, my logic here was, we only have so many commercial zones, right? So there's like a finite amount of commercial development that we could be having. So we really want to prioritize certain businesses, the ones identified here in the survey. So I was just trying to have like concrete examples of things that are in a no category and a yes category. And maybe that's not the right way to go about the objective.
Understood.
But no, perhaps you're right that it really does matter.
Well, see,
Based on the-
so
based
so
per
if I
zone.
understand, there was a desire for increasing a business entities in our town. I got that sense.
Yeah.
But we need to do that in a manageable way, so what does that look like? Where do we put these things when we're already identified certain places that are commercial that have a residential home on it already? And so what do you do with that type of thing? Or that we seek to develop, which we tried to, or what's attempted to further develop Mount Williams Pit to have a asphalt plant as part of that. That failed primarily because of the people on the hill above it that see the pit. Are there other places in town like B&B Lane that's kind of, other than the traffic of truck on Gould Road, it's isolated? Are there other venues for that type of activity to take place in other places of town? So, such as, using, just as a thought, when you think about Bolton Field, unless you've been in there, you don't know what it is, because you can't see it from the road. We can do that similar thing to when we think about, when you look at coming up Manchester Street in Concord into Pembroke, you see the AG sign for Associated Grocer. But unless you're looking for the building, you can't see the building. It's tucked in behind the church. Until you see it the first time, there's enough trees, et cetera, around that prohibit the sight of it. So I'm thinking that there needs to be a statement that pertains to how to effectively deal with business development, and also to understand that business development is also cottage industry. Because if you do a Google map of where and just take the time and zoom in, there are businesses scattered all over town that are home-based businesses that are making significant impact and doing something that's, we had Mr. Tiffany came to propose another small industrial building, but you wouldn't see it. It would be tucked in behind a piece of property, a residential house next to Bolton Field. But he's already here in town. I never knew that. I thought he was organizing his things from afar, but he's already in town doing those things. And you don't see it,
I mean, as another example, like I had to get my truck repaired last year, and I ended up taking it to Cold Spring, and they have a just gigantic complex that's right. It's parallel to 114, and even knowing it's there, like I can't see it. Like I know it's right there, and it's gigantic.
Yeah.
And obviously, they have the sales right there on the road, the RV sales. And that's you can.
Oh, when you go
see that, I'm
down
sure, but like,
Colby Road on the
down
right,
Colby
yeah.
on the right, like
Yeah.
it's just
It's massive in
it's
there.
tucked
Yeah.
back there, and they have
Yeah.
they seem to be doing well for themselves. They're obviously then paying taxes and just like standing back, you couldn't even hear 114. It was dead quiet back there. Yeah.
And vice versa, because you don't know they're there, it's not something that they're making a lot of noise either. So it comes down to, when we think about, when we get the trucking on gravel, et cetera, Mount William is limited to what they can do because of the bridge that needs to be repaired. So they're going through a different part of the neighborhood that they would not usually go through. But those types of industries are real.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not like you can control where do you put a gravel pit? Where the gravel is. The gravel pit that's in Henniker as you're going into Henniker on the right. I mean, it looks like a big pile of rubble. But when it was from sale, it was $1.2 million for that piece of property because of what potentially could happen with that particular gravel. And then you have the other one that's just past Pax Peak on the left, they're continuing to take material out of that property as well as Brownies, type of thing.
So I'm hearing, there's this, like, it sounds like there's a caveat we want to identify of certain things are not desired in certain areas, right? But they're less bad in other areas. And I have not effectively touched on that in this statement. So we definitely need to hit that point.
Yeah, I think it has to do with not just visual, but the impact that that thing makes. You talk about like the local community, and you brought it up in previous meetings of self-storage across from Dunkin' Donuts.
Oh, yeah.
Why, have some kind of visual buffer there. I would say the exact same thing about, like, I'll throw out Cortland Ave. Like, it's just this booming subdivision now, and you can't ever not see that. Could they have done anything to have that more tucked away? I mean,
But
it would be hard to do that. But if you go up Colby and go to Rolling Hills, unless you drive in there, you don't even know what's up there, because the first few feet is all undeveloped because of the ledge that's there. Once you get past that ledge, there's a big house, and they tend to, in that particular part of the road, follow a similar type of style of home. When you get up onto Roosevelt, well, that's a whole different story. You've got one house up on the hill on Roosevelt that is contemporary looking. It doesn't fit to what the neighborhood is, so there's that. But then again, I don't know which house got built first, that type of thing. Or even when you go up Mountain Road, my boys call it the zombie house. And the zombie house is a concrete bunker with windows this big. The zombie can't get through.
I know zombie house. So there's another point though, which is not just like the visuals of where something is, but like the opportunity cost of, let's say, that storage unit on 114 is like what isn't there because that storage unit is there, and that storage unit, obviously there's some benefit to people who store things there, but it's not the type of thing that really benefits the community.
So there's the rub, is that we could decide that we want certain development to come in business-wise. But unless that is something they want to do, it's not going to happen. So when we have, as an example, when we have Dollar General in South Ware, that was a realty group that wanted to bring that forward. And when they brought it forward, because it was still all within the zoning that permitted it to be there, they didn't violate any zoning to have that building there, but they did not tell us what they were going to build. They said it could be anything that they've been building, because they build and develop the property and have a vendor come in, and that vendor has it leased for a certain period of time, and then the vendor buys out from the realty group. So it could have been an Obashan Hardware, it could have been a Riley's parts store, it could have been Dollar General, it could have been two other things, I can't remember what they were, but when the developer came in, he could not tell us what it was going to be.
And that wasn't a problem.
It was.
Yeah.
I expressed the concern. I want to know what it is. The abutters wanted to know what it is, but he's promised it wouldn't be an adult bookstore, because that was the abutters' biggest concern, was an adult bookstore going in next door. But, so those are the things that are hard when we talk about business models or business growth. You really have to have a department that does that. So when you look at the Worcester Red Sox moving from Pawtucket, what was the model? The city decided they wanted to attract them. They made promises, they made concessions, they made moves to make that happen. So that would mean, in order for us to draw this type of thing, we'd have to have a zoning model that would facilitate that, so that now whose responsibility is that? That becomes the select board's responsibility.
I think there's an alternative though, because you're saying that you have to encourage these things to show up. But I think the alternative is, if somebody shows up and it's on a list, you don't need an alternative, you just say no.
Correct.
And then
Right.
you don't need a department to,
But I'm trying to be the advocate for the person who says, we need to draw business. Well, how does that work? How do we draw business to the town? We'd have to have some organization to do that, right? It's not like you sit around and say, well, we wish this would happen.
well,
Or that how do we become proactive? And proactive in both ways, proactive in prevention, proactive in development.
yeah, and I think that's where I disagree. I don't know that it's, I think it's okay to gatekeep and say, we know we don't want this here, but you don't need to say, but we absolutely know on this piece of property, we want something like this, and go make it happen. Because that's,
Well, see,
I don't know that that's the business of the town.
Correct, I agree. I think but that's some of the model that I think people are thinking in the back of their mind.
Right,
So
yeah.
when you look at, for instance, look at Hillsborough, where Tractor Supply is, okay? Walmart was looking at that before Tractor Supply. But they felt it would be better for them to be on a main route, and so they wanted to be in the corner where the courthouse is and the liquor store is, on that whole hill. They wanted to build there, and they did all their preliminary testing for all that, and it never went through. The town wasn't interested in a Walmart, and it just never happened. And by that time, that whole flat area where Tractor Supply is now Tractor Supply, and nothing else can really go there, because it's not big enough. So I don't know, so ultimately what we want to do is, yes, we want to discover categories that we would prohibit, but I'm not sure if we have to be so specific in this statement.
Yeah, so let's table number 6, or, I mean, the survey did identify, certain, I guess this also may be like better suited for the economics section to get into this type of stuff. But, the survey mentioned the kind of businesses that would maintain rural character, that could also increase commercial tax base. So I guess Salem's point that we don't necessarily have to have a proactive strategy, but there definitely has to be a mechanism for the town to say no to certain things. So I guess that mechanism is what I want to target in this
Correct.
number
But
6.
I think we also need to add to that number 6 to say things like, how do we develop agritourism? So when you think about Cortlandt Estates, that was once an active orchard that is no longer existing. How do we do that? I think of, in Glen, there was one couple who really liked to make apple cider. And they developed first a whole business about making apple cider live, and then selling cider donuts. And that developed into an apple restaurant on the same place. And it's still functioning today as a means to, it's on the strip, so to speak, on 302.
Mm-hmm.
But it's not overtly, it's not like, it's more, it fits into the ambiance of the community rather than the big steel building just down the street that's set back from the road. More of an industrial building type of thing.
Yeah, and this isn't a fully developed thought, but I think there's something to be said to, again, encourage versus, if people know that they can take those chances, if they know hey, I'm gonna try out and press apple cider, and the town's not gonna come after me, I think that goes a long way. If you know that the health department isn't gonna come knocking on your door saying, oh, has this all been pasteurized, making it up, but pasteurized,
Sure.
then people are more likely to take those risks, and then those you can't have the roadside with the commercial storefront if somebody didn't start small and build
Right.
into that. Like, and I think,
Yeah.
with, you know, with the rural scale we're talking about.
Yeah, right. Well, yeah, a good example would be Allen's Restaurant. If you ever been to Allen's?
No.
Up in Boscawen.
uh,
It's a pretty popular place, but when you look at the building, it's been added on to like 5 times. Because it grew and what he did changed as time went on, type of thing, you know?
So so
So, I think there needs to be yays and nays. You know, in a sense, that here's a category of business that we really want to support. We don't have to give details. This is a category. This is a category we want to frown upon. And I think we have to have both images in the statement.
Yeah, and maybe, you know, again, still not like having to go out seeking that yay category, but that can go back to informing, as we talk about things in number 1, that can inform the planning board saying, how can we propose zoning amendments that the town can vote on that then allow for this
Right.
kind of thing to be more likely to happen?
Right.
Um,
Good point.
Salem, are you economic development?
I have to double check the list.
I imagine if it's not Bill or myself.
Yes.
I wonder if this,
Zoning and economic.
so this discussion of
Yeah, that's fair.
what we're encouraging, I don't know if that falls more under your purview, and for land use, I mean, we can definitely go the yay or nay route in number 6, but I'm wondering if it's just not meant for
So
this
why don't you,
category.
if we say, we're talking about growth,
Right.
economic development, so if you cut it off at small town charm, and the rest of that would be addressed in economic development.
Sorry, where are we, where is the small town charm? Is this?
In the middle, where you talk about New England small town charm.
Yes.
And you stop there, and the rest of this goes to economic development.
Oh, okay.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean,
Because businesses that help facilitate the community maintain Ware's rural character and provide a service lacking in Ware should be encouraged, whereas any proposed business that does not meet these criteria must not be approved.
yeah, I mean,
I mean, you address everything in that statement.
Yes.
Everything that you're talking about down here is addressed there.
yeah, I mean, so that's, I agree completely, but what it lacks then is like the direction for the planning board, and like, what is encouraged and what is discouraged, and then you're saying that goes into
Well, it comes
Salem's
back,
category.
right, it goes back to what type of economic development will safeguard our rural character?
Yeah,
Because that's the overwhelming, when you look at the whole kit and caboodle, nothing's changed from 2004 as far as longing to keep the rural character. And in essence, we do that because any type of big construction trucks, they're put away at the end of the day, except for down by my house. Okay? For the most part, the guys who are running big businesses, their equipment goes away. It's not sitting out at the town hall. It's not sitting out at the gazebo. It's not, you know what I mean? It's not like it's there are places that there are vestiges of junk gathered, and also other places that are active businesses that are working, and if you pay attention to that fleet of equipment there, it changes, sometimes not as fast as you'd like it to be, but it changes.
okay.
And it is probably a bigger topic than, it's maybe worth bringing up right now, but I think there's also, some people, rural also includes like, yeah, we do have junk piles. sitting around.
That's a Bill point.
Like, not everything is gonna be green pastures, rolling hills,
Right.
stockade
Or,
fences.
or where's that statement that,
Maintain Ware's hillbilly character and
Yes.
provide a service.
your summary piece, I don't know what I did with it.
The one that Phil wrote.
Yeah, the first one that he wrote.
Do you know which category?
It's on transportation, it's the first thing.
Okay, get out
Oh.
of,
What's he say in the first line?
getting in a car, go somewhere is part of living there.
That's right. It's not like we're gonna put Granny in the rocking chair in the truck, but we are in that rural concept of understanding that truth, you know?
Yeah.
I don't know what I did with my copy.
And I think, because so much, we've talked about the rural part, and I think you wrote, and maybe we'll get to it, is there's also people don't want their taxes to go up. And so, to be able to thread that needle, okay, then that means, you're gonna have, it's not gonna be this immaculate landscape everywhere all the time.
Correct. Yeah, but I think there needs to be a healthy understanding of the cost of things and a healthy understanding of spending the money wisely, as opposed to just accumulating money because we can tax. To have a proper assessment of what those needs really are. And the hard part is that planning, yes, there's an element that we have to address the schools, but that's where the issue needs to be a little more controlled, which is beyond what we can do, because they're a separate entity than the town, and that's what makes it hard. And yet, how do you make, as it was in the survey, that the excellence of our schools is waning, and that we need to make our schools better. So that means we have to readjust what we're doing to be more cost effective, as well as possibly hiring a different type of criteria. But it's hard when you can't hire the excellent teacher who has grown up from various school systems to expect a certain salary, so they're not gonna come here.
We collectively on the town side, by way, mostly of the planning board, do have the lever though, like we talk about limiting building permits. If fewer people come in and bring more kids, then the school growth will naturally be limited, and therefore the school cost should naturally be limited.
Correct.
And so if that is a overly burdensome cost, which that the survey suggests, and just the data suggests, it's a huge amount of money, the town isn't helpless.
So another dynamic that I think what we forget about with the schools is that seasonally we have a group of teachers who are Title I or Class I type of teachers, special needs teachers who, because of their excellence in what they do, draw people to town. And those people will come from another community for their student to be here. They won't own a home, they'll rent a home. And that's one of the other things that contributes to that process of what cost is. Because there was a season, a lot of students were part of that Class I situation in the middle school who parents were living in the duplexes on River Road that were rentals, and taking advantage. And I got to know some of those families as I was substituting at that time, and discovered that they're only here because of this program. Once kid graduates out of this program, they're gone. And that's one of those hard things to be discerning. How do you now keep that program going when you don't have the student body to facilitate that? Or we're in an ebb and flow situation. I just know this from the Henniker School, that they had to drop a kindergarten class because they didn't have the population to have a second kindergarten class. Whereas we've got 5 kindergarten classes with at least 15, 20 kids in it, and a teacher and an aide. And some of those classes, depending upon the dynamic of the student body, get an extra aide because of behavioral issues.
I think the number, where is like 30, maybe 35% special ed. And the state average, I believe, is 22 right now. And even going back 10, 15, 20 years,
Yeah.
the averages have gone up in both. Ware has always been ahead of the state average. And again, like, that comes with a very big cost,
Yeah,
very big cost. The special training of the teachers, special facilities, how are you gonna, even the unspoken costs, what does that do to the other kids?
right. I mean, I don't know what, and I've looked at it once, maybe way back when, but when you look at bus transportation for our student body, and the amount of kids that get picked up and dropped off is sizable. When I went to school, you either went on the bus or you walked. Because mom and dad didn't drop you off at school. There was no drop-off, no parent drop-off, parent pickup, nothing like that. Unless you had an appointment in the middle of the day, mom would come pick you up, whatever. But today, I mean, it comes out of the elementary schools, go down around the building, all the way out onto 114 for pickup for, half-day, whatever program they're in. And at the end of school day and the beginning of school day is the same type of thing. Same thing that happens across the street here. And I always puzzle is, I know we have combination of high school and, I think it's changed. It's just, high school's not with elementary school anymore. But those buses are not full. They're not full.
I think we digressed a little bit.
Yeah,
It's transportation.
yeah.
Do you wanna hop to transportation? We can.
No, we can stay with,
No, I mean, I'm happy to.
I mean, our time is kind of up, but. So I will say this, let me say this about that, about my thing. I was not as elaborate or specific. I'm a bullet guy. Say it simply as best you can. But maintaining our town for transportation is important because we're a rural bedroom community. 64.4% of the population work outside of town. So as far as survey results, I just gave the brief based upon our understanding of the brief survey. I wasn't gonna give, to me, within the context of the old one, every little detail was brought out. The CIP was brought out, which I don't believe that helps us. It just muddies the water. So when I looked at the goals and responsibilities for transportation, continue to manage the overall supervision of the roads the town maintains by supporting an effective DPW department. Faithful relationship with the state. This is the big thing. When I looked at this whole section in the former plan, there were maps of places of concern that the people had that weren't our responsibility. It was the state. So we need to develop a better relationship. Support the ongoing work, because that was one of the things to implement a CIP annually. That wasn't happening in 2004.
CIP is.
Capital Improvement Program. Faithful stewards equipment needed to maintain, which we're doing, but continue to support. Support the ongoing work of the Ware Police Department as they implement proper safety procedures for our roadways. So I got a contact from Chief Moore that he wanted to speak to the issue of the speeding, but they're in a process of evaluating through a traffic study. Right now, our speed limits are set at 30 or 35, unless posted differently. But that's not posted town-wide when you come into town, like a lot of towns.
So because our sort of pattern is each goal will have a corresponding objective or
Yeah,
implementation. Could you mention for that, let's say that was a great action item, like the police is currently,
well, that's where
doing X, Y, and
I would
Z.
say our police, fire, and DPW departments are develop a vision statement and goals for the next 10 years. I mean, I can't sit here and say these should be your goals and vision. We need that information from them.
no, yeah, that's
So
perfect.
So that was one of the things I wanted to talk to the chief about, to sit down with him and say, listen, can you in a page, 2 tops, cast a vision for the next 10 years for the Ware Police Department pertaining to transportation and public safety. Same thing with the fire. Because what we're doing is, no pun intended, putting out fires. As the issue comes upon us, the only thing that we're addressing are our equipment on an annual basis. There's no personnel plans. Have you
Yeah,
had?
what was on the warrant
Have you ever
article, like rusting garage doors we were
Right,
talking
but
about?
I'm saying is that there was no plan and purpose to say, when our town gets to be this size, as far as population, this would be best represented by X amount of police officers.
I think that does exist, and you would have also seen it more with the fire. So yes, I think it exists with police. I think it also exists for fire, and you've seen that with like transitioning from a part-time to a full-time department and
right.
staggering. So
Yep.
I would disagree on that particular point.
Okay.
It may not be like
Well, I'm just,
widespread, but
right, but I'm just saying is that if those types of things are saying, so as an example for us at our church, every year, a committee needs to cast a vision for the next, next ministry year and report on the previous year's accomplishments. That happens on an annual basis. I don't know if that happens per se here, or if it's necessary, but how does the clerk's office to be more efficient? How does the tax collector become more efficient? How does the assessing department become more efficient? We had a question at our last plan, I didn't go to the last one, the previous one, where Big Boys Toys, part of that property is zoned residential. Why, when on the tax card, it's not? And we can't stand by the 2019 tax map because there's a historical overlay on Mount Dearborn Road that doesn't exist anymore, but it's there on the map. So if that's our last map, that we need to update the map because it's not. And if you're taxing by the tax card, not the zoning map, someone's due a rebate in that setting because they've been taxed based upon the tax card that says both parcels are commercial, not commercial and in back residential. So there's another assessment issue. Develop an ongoing means to periodically assess the needs of the town pertaining to transportation. It needs to be something on our, when I look at our role on the planning board, I've asked this, are we paying attention to the master plan? And I've been in,
No.
because it's
I'll say
not,
it for you, they're not.
yeah, it's not, because it's not part of the culture. And so I was serving on an international ministry as the chairman of the executive committee, and we were exercising our role and responsibility worldwide, especially in the former Soviet Union after it fell, with a 1956 Constitution and bylaws that had nothing to do with what we were doing. And it took us 2 years to try to change that, and it never changed because the executive director was stuck in 1956, and he didn't want change. He wanted to control the whole thing. Now that he's deceased, well, that's brought a lot of change. It's still doing its primary ministry of shortwave radio into the former Soviet Union through Transworld Radio in Ecuador, which broadcasts globally. Because of its location, it's able to do that. But those types of things are ongoing because that's how people are reached in regions that don't have internet, don't have cell phones, and those are getting smaller, yes, but so as an example, in our Constitution and bylaws, every 5 years it has to be reviewed. It's part of the final statement in our Constitution. so that the whole thing gets reviewed every 5 years to make sure that we are either doing what it says or that there needs to be a change that pertains to the government and why the style we're leading.
So
at
for
that
like
point.
a tangible example of what this could entail, like like an annual meeting where DPW talks to the planning board about road things, or I would just, yeah, just developing some action items.
Yeah,
I might argue though that's the purpose of CIP. I mean,
right. So if we turn over to state goal 3 under community facilities, be proactive in supporting the faithful implementation of the CIP program, not only in the area of equipment, but also in the area of facility maintenance and expansion. So when the CIP comes, we're only talking about trucks, radios, defibrillators, vehicles.
there's the road, not the road bond,
But we're not talking about facility maintenance as to what does this building need? What does the old town hall need? What does, the stone building, it's not really under our bailiwick, that's part of the historical society.
it's still owned by the town.
Right, but all those things, are we looking at those things, or are we, it seemed to me of late that the carriage shed issue, and I'm not sure if it's at the town hall or whatever, has it been an ongoing 2-3 year problem? Because it's not part of the process. So those types of things, or even to ask that of, our schools, what are you doing to maintain? So why in the world did we not know, did the town not know, that there was a part missing on the backup generator that was not able to make that thing work when the power went out during our elections? And so who came to our rescue? The fire department came to our rescue, which was good. It was a helpful thing, and it helped the community understand there's interdiscipline, inter-department help taking place. But why is it that went for so long without it being functioning? That should be, no one in their right mind, in their own home, if you have a backup generator, you don't let it sit for 5 years and then power goes out and, you maintain it. Same thing with your lawnmower. You don't let your lawnmower sit. You maintain it so that it's functioning. But why are we letting those types of issues fall by the wayside?
And at the same time, supporting as a town more,
Correct.
like, if you can't maintain what you already have, why should you?
Right, how are you effectively using? So when this building was first built, there was a bunch of classrooms that weren't being used. So our food pantry was across the street there for a long time. The town food pantry, not the school food, the town food pantry. And there were still empty rooms. And they tried to use those empty rooms as creatively as possible. But now there's no empty rooms because the fourth graders moved up, which I'm not sure if they foresaw that issue when they built that building. So, yes, there are some actionables here that I didn't put in that can be put in.
Yeah, no, it sounds like you have plenty of ideas.
But I don't want to, I guess my concern is that I don't want us to make an actionable
Yeah.
based upon our whim,
Mm-hmm.
but we base it upon what we've discovered. So these goals kind of fit into that, but so now how do we flesh out I can't speak for the police department,
No.
but we should have part of those objectives to say, we want to encourage these things to take place. And that's why the second page doesn't have many objectives, but the planning board to implement the necessary changes to our zoning that supports the safe transportation or supports our facilities and services. Because it's hard. How does zoning affect proper maintenance of our facilities?
That's, I'm not making the connection.
There isn't, I don't see a connection. But somehow, that component, whether it's dictated from the select board down or every department, because I don't know who supervises the maintenance of this building. Does that fall under DPW? Huh?
I don't know anymore, but it was constantly changing.
Right. So it depends upon whimsically who was the closest electrician to come. Well, how do you get qualified to have the title of town electrician? To be the one who always comes in? Well, it's because you're available, or is there a maintenance budget for this building? I don't know the budget that well to be discerning about that, but that would be something I would want to ask of us to, as far as facilities is concerned, because we like to talk about the services quite a bit, because the services are tangible things that you can put your hand on. There's brand new police cars, there's a brand new fire truck coming down the pike, there's new equipment, they're well-trained, that's all services. But how do you maintain, is our present safety complex sufficient? And was it the end-all for our police department to be in that same building? I have an inkling that it wasn't, but it was a temporary fix to being in the basement here.
And, I mean, we have seen facilities-wise, like the police go and search out, I'm blanking on what they've been calling it, but, you know, the garage structure.
Right.
And it took a couple years, but to pursue that. And that was with the support of DPW as well, like, so with the, not the foundation, but I'll call it the foundation setting.
Yeah. I understand.
But that was, that wasn't necessarily like a long-term goal. Like, we will put this thing here. It did perhaps achieve a long-term goal of, you know, expanding the room that they have available, or
Correct.
pulling, you know, not needing to go to storage in Concord or wherever.
Right, yeah. I'll send you this. Are you gonna do the, kind of the grouping of it all together in one document, or you want me to do that?
Sorry, send what to me?
This. In a digital form.
Oh,
So we
just
can
for,
all put it in together into one piece of document.
moving forward for when we all compile and,
You wanna do that, or you want me to do that?
no, well, I don't know if we're quite there
No, we're not
yet,
there
but,
yet, but I just wanted, that's a piece of the
Yeah,
puzzle. I think it would be helpful to know who's gonna do that.
yeah, well, if we have a standardized format we can agree on, then hopefully it can just be sort of spliced together
Yeah,
without
cut and
too
paste.
much
Yeah,
effort. So
okay.
if you prefer goals to be followed by objectives, or we can do my format where we just state a goal and then add some suggestions tacked on to it.
Well, I was just trying to remember, I don't have it handy right now. So, when you look at page 16 and following in the master plan, yeah, so if you flip that page, is there anything on the back?
I'm lacking the
Okay.
following pages.
So, I only kept this page because of the vision statements.
Yeah, right.
But it said goals and then objectives consistently throughout for all of those. But not to say that we have to do that.
I mean, just as a perhaps third party, I'm kind of drawn to what Phil did. It feels, I don't want to be,
No,
but like, it's a little more actionable of, here's what we want. I'll just do the first one, put a cap on, the planning board should.
Mhm.
That's what we want, that's how we're gonna do it,
Yep.
versus like, these are good goals, but the objectives, how is that different than
the goals.
and how is it different than what maybe they're already doing, or will say that they're already doing, versus, if we do, like you mentioned,
Well, how do you-
put some
right.
teeth on it,
So the issue of transportation, it's
yeah.
there's nothing new in the
I-
data. Do you know what I mean?
I
It's all
do.
stuff we're already doing. We just need to police.
I remember, and originally we had some discussion of, do we even need this transportation section, but I guess we did because it was mandated by
Yes,
the laws that be.
right. Well, it's like I got a question that was posed to me in an email. Do we have information on this whole transportation? Because I think the person or people were looking for validation for providing more public transportation in town. And I said, we're not even close to coming to that, but if we wanted to, the overwhelming information is, no, we don't need that. And even within the context of what's attempted by the senior center, it's only gonna meet the needs of the senior center people. And not everybody who is a senior goes to the senior center. And in our church situation, a lot of those seniors get rides from church people. And that's the norm. That's what should be happening. Or it's family members. You know, I think there was one situation that if we could, as a church, do it over again, we would go talk to the family to take care of this person. Because the family wasn't stepping up because of relational tension. And people took care of this senior person, and she kind of shunned her family because of that. I firmly believe we did a disservice for that setting, because Scripture teaches it's if you've got family, that's their responsibility. It's not the church's responsibility to go, you know, you stubbed your toe, Phil. You've got family, right? You got no family, your wife?
I got a wife.
You got a wife. So you stub your toe. You don't go to the neighbor across the street to say, hey, I need a ride.
I understand your point,
You know what I
yeah.
mean? You go and ask your spouse, can you help me? Well, no, my schedule doesn't fit for you to go to the hospital right now, so I'm not gonna take you. Well, that's a bunch of baloney, isn't it? But that's where, you know, when we look at widows and orphans, the issue there is that you go to meet the need of the real widow, the real orphan, not the one you think is. You have to find out what's their sphere, you know, their connectedness, what's their sphere of influence, what people are involved in their life that they've survived thus far. What is it going on now that we have to all of a sudden interfere with their system? Type of thing.
Maybe this is just me, but I think it's also something to be said, in the same vein as the churches, as an entity, separate from, like, town government and whatnot, like, but it's still part of the community, and the senior center, still part of the community, but separate from town government.
Right.
But still, like, so it's something, it's
still an
it's a
instrument of
good thing,
influence, yes.
but it's not necessarily something that the town needs to,
Manage.
right.
Right.
And I think there's actually a negative involved in that, where you say, no longer is it something that you are able to volunteer your time, your money, your effort. Actually, we're gonna take it out of your taxes, and now it's mandated. Like, well, so you're saying I don't have a choice in the things that I support?
Right.
In that way?
Correct.
There's something lost, like, in my opinion, there's something lost community-wise when that's forced upon people.
Right. Well, that's the tension that we consistently have between Parks and Rec and WAC. You know, so how does that effectively work when there's no impetus for Parks and Rec to become something bigger, when you have this whole volunteer system working somewhat efficiently to make those recreation programs available to our kids?
I mean, and to maybe pull it back to, like, facilities and services, park can be an effective facilitator of facilities, but if, you know, and WAC can provide the services at those facilities, but understanding that, like, other entities may also provide services at the same facilities. You know, if we already own that land, we already maintain that land.
Right. Well, it comes down to communicating well and not letting incidents set the tone. We are always going to have 16, 17-year-olds trying to break in and do donuts on any field. To some kids, that's a rite of passage. I have that same problem in our parking lot at church.
Rural character.
Yep.
I'm not condoning it, I'm just,
Not cow tipping, it's donuts. Or even the burnouts, which the police try to police, but they can't catch all of them.
Seems like that jet lag is just crushing you.
Yeah. All right, so let's call it a night and continue chewing on it.
I will have my sections for discussion next time.
very good.
And we still have, what was it, natural resources, open space, cultural resources. We did end up covering a bit, transportation, community facilities and services. Are those worth more review or like?
Well, I think what the sense I got from you both was that I need to flesh it out a little more. And I'll do that.
Well, I mean, because it's what you do end up creating it's the master plan, right? I mean, so
Right.
yeah.
I mean, it's hard, because when you look at those statements and you put them in a 2-column perspective, some of those are longer than the 2004 statements, because it's a 2-column piece of paper. And you look at it, right? And you look at that. Goal, develop and implement a strong master plan.
Well, I mean,
That's deep.
if there isn't like an actionable answer to the goal, I would just suggest you eliminate the goal,
Gotcha.
and that could make your life easier, our lives easier.
That actually goes back to something you talked about at the very, very beginning of this, was the old one threw out so many things that people realistically should have known were never gonna get done.
Right.
So, I mean, maybe that's a fine way to slice it, is,
Well, how about we approach it this way? Let's be as broad, as big as possible, and then we whittle it down, so to speak. We fine tune it. So if I recall the process when we went through, in 2003, we had a meeting at John Stark. There were about 350 people, and they were subgroups that broke out after the main session. And we started with ideas. Drew out all the ideas. We drew it all on a grease board. And then we started, okay, so now which ones are you passionate about? And we started circling those. And then the ones that didn't get circled got eliminated. And then we said, okay, so how do those now come up with a statement that summarizes that? Because it naturally started to gravitate, there's certain categories of information.
Mm-hmm.
And so then we started having bullet points or summary statements about. And that's where that the vision statements by the community on that one single page. These are the summary of everything that was considered. And when Phil and the last meeting when you weren't here, we touched on the majority of these, except for the last 4. The top 4 are still legit. Concerns that are part of the people's concerns, as well as legit concerns for the master plan. Okay?
Yeah. So, how do we adjourn? I always forget.
Motion to adjourn. I move we adjourn.
second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. It's 8:39. Can I shut this off now, Salem?